security research, social sciences, security research, the specific source endeavor, and how we look at this from the Commission, DG Home, counterterrorism and radicalization policy perspective. We attribute a huge importance to the research in the social sciences side, the humanities side, even broader than traditional description of social sciences. We believe that this is, as it always has been, essential, and somehow we have the feeling that a renewed investment must be made. I'm talking these days about us being in the radicalization 4.0 generation. Yeah? The 1.0 was entirely about research. We went out years ago, in 2004, 2005, and engaged with the scientists that were out there, had been publishing something on the different fields related somehow to terrorism, to try to understand what was known, what was not known, what science could bring us, and what science was lacking in terms of conditions to develop its own capacities to support policy making and shaping and implementation in the security domain. This was fundamental because of the very paradigm that we were trying to develop and implement on what the fight against terrorism was in Europe. This is a paradigm that was completely different, not in reaction to, but because of endogenous conditions in Europe, to the paradigm of the time, which was the American one, basically based on the notion that you fight terrorism by defense means, that you protect from terrorism by border protection, homeland security, and the fight against terrorism is to be done by states. Yeah? This was the prevailing paradigm. The one that we developed in Europe was based on the opposite. The fight against terrorism is a fight under the law, for the law, control for the law. It's a rule of law, number one. Number two, borders will not protect us from what is brewing inside our own societies. Terrorism is a global issue with local dimensions, and we are exporting as much as importing terrorism. It's something that exists here in our societies, right? So keeping it away will not work. And thirdly, the fight against terrorism is a responsibility that does not end with the states. The states have a responsibility, international community has a responsibility, UN has, the EU has, but local authorities, mayors, police officers, frontline agents, social security experts, and so on and so forth, they all have a responsibility. It's a common responsibility of our societies. So when we reached out to social scientists and we asked for their contribution, this was inherent to the very concept that we were developing for the model of security that we needed. We needed this input. The second and third generation of radicalization have somehow started developing on the basis that we need the input from frontliners, right? But the research elements somehow faded into a second role. Yeah? So we reached out to the prison and probation officers, to the people that are dealing with internet, to all sorts of experts in the front line. But the academic aspect of our investment was still taking place. Efforts were being made on all the different dimensions, but somehow this was not as an important priority in overall terms that it was in the first 1, 2, 3 years when we really needed the researchers to tell us what to look for. I think that in this fourth generation of radicalization, which we are undertaking now, and on which then we will talk more in detail, and this is the purpose of the presentation, and also the one that Christiana no doubt will do, we are now, what characterizes the way we are looking at radicalization this day is a lot of interrogations. Radicalization is no longer, fortunately, due to the efforts of many, including Gilles de Kerkhove, the counterterrorism coordinator that has been playing a very important role in that regard. It's no longer the feud of ministers of interior. Ministers of justice have taken their responsibilities over the last 2, 3 years, looking at what they have to contribute on radicalization in jails, the penal system, but also the broader issue of hate speech, and the placement of terrorism or jihadist terrorism-related issues in the broader context of the breakdown of common identity in our societies. But what has been happening now over the last couple of months is that other stakeholders, political, public stakeholders, are taking responsibility. Ministers of education, youth, sports, those responsible for urban development or for regional development are becoming increasingly aware as well that there are responsibilities to be met in the broader context of societal issues. And on that, we are back, I wouldn't say to square one, but we are back to a lot of questions. We are back to an understanding of what is happening in this domain, which has a lot of interrogations, a lot of question marks. Secondly, and to finish the comments on research, there is the fact that we are more aware than ever about the very, very rapidly evolving nature of the problem. To give you only one example, we are now, once again, Gilles has been playing a very, very important role on that, my commissioner, Sir Julian King as well. The issue of returnees and the particular focus on child returnees, infants, yeah? 350 kids who went from Europe to Syria have been watching decapitations there, have been exposed to the most extreme examples of horror, have been conditioned in education, in the family, in society, in enormous ways. And, you know, these kids will be coming back at some point, plus all the others that were born there, 400, 500, no one knows exactly. So there will be hundreds of infants, children, adolescents, some of which may have committed crimes. So you have the penal, juvenile delinquents dimension, the penal law dimension, the reintegration of youngsters who have committed crimes, potentially some of them, all the others that will have to go into a school environment. You have radicalization of children, refugee children in refugee camps. You have, and all of this was in the minds of some of us 1 year ago. But by and large, these are phenomena that are unraveling as we speak. And we are not clueless. We get what we can to work on it. The Radicalization Awareness Network has been working on this. But we need scientists to help out. Everyone is necessary. So what is happening at this point, the role of SOURCE, the investment we are doing in security research, and which is growing in the humanities and social sciences area, is there for a reason. It's not just political correctness. It's not just the fact that we don't want to discriminate between the technological innovation, hard sides of security and the rest. It's because we really need the social scientists and the humanities researchers to contribute, to factor in this. Now, when you do that, we need objectivity. We need inputs that will sometimes challenge assumptions. We read this study about radicalization and integration in Belgium, published last year, that actually challenges the notion that more integration means less radicalization when you compare Moroccan and Turkish communities, right? It's surprising, it is troubling, but we absolutely need to be challenged. We need to hear things which we are not prepared to hear, and we need to meditate on them. And we need to bring that to the attention of political authorities and try to understand if this means that we have the wrong paradigm, or it means that it applies, but it doesn't apply in all circumstances, because there are factors that may in some ways interfere with the classical interpretation of the connection between policies and their risk mitigation results. So we need your input. Problem is, and I will stop here before then talking a little bit about what we are doing in this field in terms of policy. There is a need, a common need, which is your responsibility, not ours, to, while framing research in objectives, establishing categories, creating boxes so that one can analyze, not reify, not exaggerate the utilitarian nature of the analytical concepts in such a way that the policymakers will think that these are things that exist out there in the real world, because the real world is much more complicated. You do not have sets of root causes that are separated. And what you have in one place in Brussels, in one community, and what you have in another place only 300 meters away. In the Moroccan community, as Gilles has been pointing out, general Moroccans and the ones that come from the Atlas and speak a different language, they don't behave in the same way. They don't pose the same types of risks, right? So if you start categorizing in a very neat and apparently objective and sort of, you may lose a lot of the nuances which are critical for the way in which one will implement policies. And then the focus that Source is giving obviously to jihadist-related radicalization and terrorism is also, if you want to do something and do it well, you have to establish clear parameters. But if you then restrict things too much, you may miss interactions between some types of factors and other factors which correlate and which are outside the parameter set. So this only has some elements for reflection on your side on the sort of research you are doing. Regarding what we are doing, and probably we'll share things a little bit with Christiane, we from the Commission side are focusing right now on a number of parameters. Taking forward and moving even further in terms of what we have been doing, implementing better, Radicalization Awareness Network. Well, most of you, I hope everyone knows what it is. Thousands and thousands of entities, even more experts across the European Union working in different working groups that as different as health, internet, victims. So we need to take this further, add other categories of frontline practitioners to this, create a few additional groups, have a better interrelation between the expertise that has been gathered in the Radicalization Awareness Network and policymakers, facilitate the bridge building, which is complicated because one wants to prevent contamination from too much political guidance into the objective and bottom-up gathering of expertise. But on the other hand, if the expertise is of no avail to make better policies happen, if the bridge is missing, you have a problem of missed opportunities. So bringing the two sides together is not easy, it's complex, but this is a very important issue on which we are focusing. Enough about Radicalization Awareness Network, where probably Christiane will tell you much more about it. We are working together in all of this. Obviously, there is the whole domain of polarization. I've referred to this indirectly before. So the interplay between the types of radicalization that are taking place within the Muslim community in specific parts of it under specific constraints and conditions, some of them imported from the outside, Wahhabism and Salafism, but there is also all the rest that is out there, including Islamophobia, including extreme right-wing discourse, hate speech, racism, which is increasing across Western societies in general, as we all know, and also in our own societies. So the issues of polarization, the relationship between societal polarization and radicalization is, of course, something that we believe needs close attention and public expression of prioritization. The public needs to know that one is not obsessed in one type of societal problematics, missing what is happening elsewhere. Otherwise, this will give the wrong signals to a lot of people, including our Muslim fellow citizens. I would end my 15 minutes talking about the online dimension of radicalization and how this relates to where we place this in the overall scope of things, and both how important we think it is and how much we think that this is not the silver bullet in the process. Certainly, it's one of the highest priorities that we have in this field. The Internet Forum, engaging with the Internet industry, trying to address the needs to engage effectively in the net space, in the social media, is at the top of our concerns in this field. The Internet Forum has met twice before, is meeting again very, very soon. We have at ministerial level, and we remain very much optimistic. We are encouraged by the type of reactions we have been getting from the Internet industry in terms of their willingness to share responsibilities in two main regards, as the current state of discussions allow us to judge, one of which is obviously taking out and keeping out criminal material from the internet, and the other one is empowering these credible voices in our societies that are capable, willing, and have the legitimacy to produce and disseminate effective counter-narratives, effective alternative views to the ones that are being dispensed to our citizens, and in particular to our children, our adolescents and young adults. In this regard, we are encouraged. Certainly, Europe is the global leader in this regard. And this is one of those areas where Europe is not just the sum of its member states, it's a bit more than the sum of its member states. So actually you can talk about the European Union leading globally the process of engaging with the internet industry. The United States, for reasons that we all understand, First Amendment and general culture in the United States, is not in a position to engage as a global leader in this regard. The European Union is. We are confident that on the part of the industry there is a clear understanding that it is either self-rule, self-management, corporate responsibility, and collectively so, or there will be regulation coming. And the industry is aware of that and is willing to move on that. So creating platforms so that material that has been taken out is not doesn't come again into the internet. We are expecting good news from the industry in the coming weeks. We are also very optimistic about the industry wanting to contribute actively to the empowerment of counter-narrative credible voices, a project that we have launched, 10 million euros to empower civil society in the fight against radical messages. But to finish, we don't think that that is the field where the war, the battle is going to be won. Actually, it is in the streets. In this country, I will finish there, 30 seconds. If you go to Mechelen, if you go to Dendermonde, you will see societies that should have sent to Syria something like together 80, 90, 100 people. And zero went, zero, not one. Okay? So the solutions, and these people have the same internet as the rest of Europe, the rest of Belgium, the rest of us. The internet is the same, satellite imagery is the same, they have the same proportion of Muslims, of foreign-born. Yeah? It is there in the streets, the communities, the frontliners, the educators, the mayors, the people that live in the real world that bring the solutions to the problems of the real world. Our role as European civil servants is simply to put those who know in contact with the ones that are seeking for a solution and make sure that the expertise that experts like you can gather is available to both to help to transform a solution that works here into a solution that would not exactly work there if it's not complemented by expertise that the one who developed does not yet have. Thank you.